First of all, I have to admit, I don't really like the word all that much because I feel like I have to explain myself. I'm Christian, but, and then go into what that means. And the truth is, I think that's where we are in today's day and age. People who are attracted to Jesus like I'm attracted to Jesus, attracted to what it is that he taught, how it is that he lived, what he showed us. And then for people for who that's true, you're going to have to decide for yourself what Christian means.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello and welcome to More Than One Way. I'm Whitney Ross, and with me is Thom Rasnick.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Thom. Today, we're going to take on a big topic, maybe one of the biggest ones that we've talked about. We're going to talk about what comes to mind and what does it mean when we talk about the term Christian or Christianity. It's hard to know where to start with something that's that large.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, not to put you on the spot, Whitney, but I'm gonna. What comes to your mind when you hear the term Christian?
I think one of my first reactions is I feel like I'm on the Family Feud. Top 10 answers on the board,
yeah, right.
100 people survey.
That's right.
What do you think of when you think of Christian? I recently came across a book. It's a new book by Brian McLaren, and it's called Do I Stay Christian? And it's a book where he talks about just the terminology Christianity and just what all that means. And he starts the book with a list that I found really interesting of 11 different ways to look at that term.
Wow.
And he talks about Christianity as being a meal with many ingredients.
Yeah.
Some of the ones he mentions that you can look at it historically or institutionally. You can look at it doctrinally, moralistically, missionally, politically. And he just goes on and he talks about 11 different ways. And as I looked at that list, I was thinking of others.
Right.
So there's this ongoing way to define the term.
Right.
So it really, I think is worth a discussion.
It really is. It's a huge term, and so what you say makes me think of is it really depends on who you're talking to.
Right.
Depends on the person you're talking to. Depends on what I think about it, what you think about it, what the person thinks about it. Something that I came across though was using the term Christian on a large kind of national scale. Mm-hmm. First thing is the younger you are, the more negative the term is. And the older you are and the more you participate in your own church, the more positive the term tends to be. And in one recent article I read, mostly with young people, and young people means people kind of in their 30s and younger.
Okay.
In their 30s and younger. They said, when they were asked, when you hear the term Christian, what do you think? And they said things like, well, hypocritical, condemning, judgmental. They said things like, Christians are always against things and not for anything. And I thought, God, this huge term, and it's been just reduced to this such negative connotations.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has to be that, but it certainly seems to have that feeling, that sense of meaning right now.
It's, as we've discussed it and talked with others, I kept hearing the word hijacked, where it feels like that the term has been taken in a lot of different directions by different people, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it leaves people feeling like, well, that's not what I mean when I use that term. So it can leave us disconnected. Yeah,
so almost like you have to define it. And if you look on a national scale, if you look in the media and the way sometimes the Christianity is portrayed, and this is part of the world, what you see is a lot of people who really kind of identify being a good American and Christianity and being a good Christian as the same thing. So it's like the two are intertwined. If you're a good American, you're Christian. If you're Christian, you're American. And those things seem to be almost intertwined, almost identical. And the thing about it is that's nothing new. So here we go back into Christian history. Say, please, come on with me. back into the Christian world.
Strap in. You know, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, that's right. This is just going to be so exciting. Back in the day, so for the first 300, 400 years of Christianity, there were a lot of different expressions of it, a lot of different ways that people were Christian. And you can get a sense of it just by reading the four Gospels, because they're all just a little bit different. And they all represent just a little bit they all represent different communities within what we would call Christianity. And those are just the ones that made it into the Bible. There were other books with other communities that didn't make it in, that were functioning, living people who consider themselves Christian. And then around 325, around the 4th century, Constantine, the Roman emperor, made Christianity the Roman Empire's religion, the religion of the Roman Empire. And once that happened, then eventually what came to be was, if you were a good Roman citizen, you were a Christian. And if you were a Christian, you were a good Roman citizen. So it happens over and over and over again within. And in our day and time, I don't know if it's hijacking or how it would be considered. It's those two things come into play, American and Christian. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that gets played out in the media, and it looks pretty negative. Mm-hmm. It can look pretty condemning. It can look real judgmental. It can look like, if you're not like me, then you're not Christian. And yeah. So that's why people, I think,
it's interesting because there are obviously more than one way to be an American.
Yeah.
And there's more than one way to be a Christian. Yeah. And then to put those two together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and once again, this played itself out, I think, in the movie Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Did you ever see that movie?
I did.
Wasn't that a great movie?
It was really good. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who don't know, Hacksaw Ridge is a movie about a guy named, I'll get his name, Desmond Doss. And Desmond Doss was a Seventh-day Adventist who was a nonviolent person. And he came up right around the time when people his age were getting drafted to go into World War II. And he wanted to stay true to what he thought were his Christian beliefs and Christian truths, and that was nonviolence at the center, and then other things. Keeping the Sabbath was a big one for him. And but he also wanted to serve the country. And so he went into the draft. He went in, and they tried to get him out. They didn't want him once they found out that he wasn't going to pick up a gun and go fight. They were, they really didn't think of him as a nonviolent person. They thought of him as a coward. And he stuck true to his belief, because this is what was Christian for him. Mm-hmm. And what was Christian for him was to live a life of nonviolence while at the same time serving for a cause that he really believed in. So he stayed with it despite being thrown in prison, despite being tormented by other people in the army, and became a medic. It was a medic within the army. And they found themselves on Okinawa, and they found themselves in this horrific battle at Hacksaw Ridge, which was this huge cliff, this huge 50, 75-foot cliff, something like that, where the battle took place. And it had a lot of Japanese army were at the top, and so it was very hard to take because they could just sit there and pick people off. Mm-hmm. Well, his, what's a troop? Is it called like a troop?
Yeah, a troop or unit maybe.
Or unit, troop, platoon, whatever. I'm a big
branch.
Military dude. So they went and were going to fight in this battle. And he had just been ridiculed, put down. His captain called him a coward. They were, once again, they were trying to get him out. And many of the people within their troop were stuck up there on that ridge and wounded. And there were these nets that they climbed up in order to get up to the ridge. And at nighttime, he climbed up there, and then he hooked up like a pulley system with a rope and started just dragging people out of harm's way, most of them injured, and hooking them up to the what was like a pulley and letting them down all the way to the ground. And he did it hour after hour after hour after hour, and he ended up saving 75 people.
Oh, my goodness.
He won the Medal of Honor per se, and he never picked up a gun. Never once picked up a gun. Stayed true to what it was for him, what it meant to be a Christian. And then afterwards, you can imagine his whole troop that, thought he was a hero. He was a hero. And he just changed their whole belief about what it meant to be someone true to their own beliefs, someone true to what it is that they thought, in this instance, being a Christian was all about. And I think what it shows is, once again, even from the beginning, and then on and on and on it goes, there's been more than one way to be Christian. There's been more than one way to understand what that word means. And there isn't just one way.
And I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned where that term Christian kind of came into play in history.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was helpful. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. It's in the book of Acts, and I can't remember where it is, but I swear it's there. So you could just go find it if you want. There's a time where they said the first time that the people were called Christians was in Antioch somewhere. And that prior to being called Christians, what the people who were all about Jesus, the people who were into what Jesus was talked about and did, they were called followers of the way. So from the beginning, the first part was really more a very active word about living life. Beliefs, sure, are going to be a part of that, like it was with the Hacksaw Ridge guy. But it's living those beliefs. It's living from that place. That became that was the initial understanding of what these people were doing. They were followers of a way that made their life more full. And I think Desmond Doss is a great example of that.
Yeah. So as you've had your own journey and kind of wrestled with that word and what it means, what have you come to land on that it means for you?
Well,
big question.
It is. It is. So first of all, I have to admit, I don't really like the word all that much. Because I feel like I have to explain myself. I'm Christian, but, and then go into what that means. And the truth is, I think that's where we are in today's day and age. People who are attracted to Jesus, like I'm attracted to Jesus, attracted to what it is that he taught, how it is that he lived, what he showed us, and then many throughout Christian history who picked up what he thought and how he taught. Those people are very influential to me, and for people for who that's true, you're going to have to decide for yourself what Christian means. Okay, so for me, I decided I'm going to have to decide what this means for me. First and foremost, I like to identify myself primarily as a human being. I'm a human being having this experience here in life and sharing this world with other human beings. And what the Christian piece for me is, it provides me a way to be, a way of life, ways, practices to use, community to be involved with, people to help call me into account and support me, a tradition that has some beautiful, beautiful gifts to pass on, gifts like deep prayer, meditation, fasting, things that help me in my life to try to then enter into life in such a way that I think is more beneficial to life, more constructive to life, and helps me be the kind of human being I want to be. So for me, Christianity is all that.
Yeah.
It's all that stuff, but it's primarily back to the original meaning, and that is a way of being, a way of life. That's not like one way. It's the way of life that's coming through me. So like I heard one person put it this way. So being a Christian would be living your life as fully and completely and honestly as Jesus lived his life, come what may. So I have to be fully and completely me, what's coming through me, and live that as best that I can, here and now, come what may, the way that Jesus did in his day and his time. So it's much more about living than it is belief. Like I said, is a part of it, but it's much more about living.
And that implies too that it grows.
Yeah, it
That
grows
it's
and
something
changes.
that
Yes.
expands,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
where I think sometimes the idea can be a set of beliefs that you kind of understand or accept, and at that point it's pretty defined, and then maybe you just carry that with you. But what you're talking about is something that's growing every day.
Yeah, it changes all the time. It changes as I change, and so it just some of my history. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and so I've always been around Christianity. It's always been a part of my life, but I haven't always been the same kind of person, and so my Christianity has changed as I have changed, as I've gone on. My understanding of who and what Jesus is has changed as I've changed. My understanding of what I mean by God has changed as I have changed. And once again, it is this ongoing process of growth, of becoming fully human, fully whole.
So in thinking about it being this individual thing where people really have to kind of decide what it means, what does that mean for community? If everybody's kind of on an individual path, what does it mean for a Christian community?
Yeah, well, what I think for me, what it means is the community is going to be really diverse. You're going to have a lot of different individual types of people, but at the same time, open to understanding the other person, open to learn from the other person and have the other person learn from me. So it would be a group of people. It'd almost be like a really good basketball team.
Okay.
Right? So a really good basketball team is a community, right? And in that community, you have all different types of people doing each doing his or her part. In a sense, each being his or herself and living from that place and coming from that place. And the truth is when there's a good mix of people who aren't all the same, so we don't have just a bunch of point guards,
right,
or you don't have just a bunch of centers, that's when the team works the best. That's when the team comes, so it's a little bit like that. I know it's not identical to that, but it's a little bit like that. And so the idea being, you have to be you and I have to be me, but that doesn't mean we can't be in relationship.
Right.
So in the Bible, Paul used things like the body to try to say, you have to have arms, you have to have hands, you have to have legs. So every piece has its own uniqueness, and each piece is stronger when they come together.
Still interconnected.
It's still interconnected.
Yeah.
And that is a huge, huge thing, the interconnected piece. That's a huge, huge piece of what I think it means to be Christian and what I think community means. I think, truthfully, we are just in community, whether we know it or not.
Okay.
Because we are interconnected one to another all the time. And I think things like COVID showed us this. What happens over there across the seas has an impact over here.
Right.
What happens in one place has an impact in another place. And so we're all interconnected in some way, whether we know it or not. And I think that's part of what it means to be community, is me coming to know it. Coming to know I am connected to you and you're connected to me, and that's an important thing. And somehow or another, in this mysterious thing that our tradition called the body of Christ is so much bigger than an institutional church. The body of Christ is this interconnectedness of all living beings. Not to get too deep or anything like that, but that's what it makes me think about. That's what it makes me think about. And when you think about like just your own family, or think about your friends, it's when, well, you tell me, isn't it true that when each is who they are, but yet we can accept each other and come together, that's when life has got that magic.
Yeah.
But when we're all trying to be the same way, we're all trying to think the same way, everybody's got to look the same way, well, that's boring.
Yeah, we're missing out on a lot.
Oh, on a ton. On a ton. It would be like in the Hacksaw Ridge movie, it would be like him caving in because everybody's this way. everybody's carrying a gun, everybody's marching to him caving in and saying, well, I guess I got to be like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's the way to be community. But no, he stayed true to who he was, and life happens. This amazing thing happens. And if he hadn't stayed true to that, there would not have been community. There would just have been a bunch of people imitating each other.
Right. I think that paints a really beautiful, hopeful picture, even in the midst of what we've talked about with the terminology going in a lot of different directions. And sometimes it seems like the louder voices are the negative voices. The voices that get amplified at times are the ones that are a little more toward the edge.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to have a message like you're talking about in the midst of that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, because I think it can be, and supposed to have been, Jesus came to show us a positive way to be, way to enhance life, a way to have abundant life, not to be against a bunch of stuff. And so, I think Christianity is a beautiful, beautiful path and a beautiful, beautiful religion. But there's lots of them. I think Buddhism is beautiful. I think Islam is beautiful. I think Judaism is beautiful. I think they're all beautiful in their own way. It's just in our day and age, we're going to have to decide what it is that it means for us if we're attracted to what it is Jesus shows us. That's the big thing. How do you understand it from where you are trying to live your life? How do you understand this Christian thing?
So as we kind of think about that and we start to kind of wrap things up, what advice would you share for someone who's on that journey to try to discover what that means for themselves? What would you suggest where do they start?
Well, the first thing I would do, if you're really on a journey and you're really trying to find that, I do think you probably should start with, is there a church? Is there some kind of organized community that you can find and see if it fits with where you are? That would be the first thing. Mm-hmm. Is there some kind of group? Or is there a person in your life that's interesting and you'd like to get to know better? Is there somebody like that who professes something like Christianity, some kind of then get to know that person. And then as time goes on, once again, I think it's important to find people that you can really truly share what you think, what you believe, what's going on within you in a safe place. Mm-hmm. And a place with people who are safe and who are going to accept you and who are not going to just kind of like push you away or tell you shouldn't think that way or tell you that's not Christian or tell you. And then just trust that this is an ongoing process. It's not going to just happen overnight.
And it can be a little messy.
Yeah, it's definitely, life's messy, right?
Yeah.
Life's messy. And the more you get into something like a religion like Christianity, the messier it could get.
Yeah.
I mean, here's another example of kind of some of the messiness and how it can play out. And this is, Cindy and I, my wife and I, are watching this show called Under the Banner of Heaven. And it was a book written by this dude. I can't remember the dude's name.
John Krakauer.
That's it. Yeah. That's the guy's name, John Krakauer. So he wrote the book, and it's about a murder that happened within this Mormon community. Right? And the police officer who's investigating the murder is a very, very good Mormon, very, very devout man. And he's following his understanding of what it means to be Christian in the sense of following what Jesus is for him. Mm-hmm. Okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, he's got a happy life. He's devout. He's got two beautiful kids, a wife. They take care of his mother in his house, and it's a lovely setup. And then this part of what happened in this murder is that there were Mormons who murdered other Mormons. And so then he got into this and had to find out some things about his religion's past that he didn't really want to know, that he didn't really want to see. Mm-hmm. And the more he got into it, the deeper he got into some things. And there's no perfect religion. There's no perfect people. So everybody has a past. It's just the leadership of his church didn't want the past to be known, so they just kept sweeping it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug. And he couldn't sweep it under the rug anymore. And so there's a scene where somebody had given him a book of a different Mormon history than he was aware of.
Okay.
And he was so afraid to read it that it was a book with another cover over the top, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd be like you're sitting in class, supposed to be reading your textbook, and you got the textbook cover, and you're reading Sports Illustrated or whatever it is. So he's like that. And it's in the middle of the night, and he goes out into the garage of his house, and he's sitting in the car reading this book with the light from the car on there. He's sweating. It's like he's doing something wrong. He's looking around. Okay. And the more he reads, the more he starts to just kind of break down. Right? This is the messy part. He starts to be like, wow, the things that I thought were true, I'm finding they're not. Or they're not presented fully, the full truth. The whole truth is not presented. And so he's going through this messy, hard time. But when he comes out on the other side, whenever that might be, the movie ended before you find that out. What I believe, what I know to be true is he'll have a deeper faith. He'll be in a deeper place. He'll know more about what it means to follow Christ on his own, not from just the teachings of the authorities in his church. And that's part of the messiness of it all, is that it's this ongoing process that takes us straight through life, not around it, straight through it, and helps us, and always says, and you're not alone. So yeah, it's got that messy aspect, but the messiness is beautiful.
So as we mentioned at the beginning, this is such a big topic. It was hard to know where to start. It's also hard to know where to wrap things up. So as we're kind of trying to do that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, my thoughts, first of all, is it's kind of like your list, so you have 11 different ways that he wrote out what it could mean, what Christian could mean, and that was just a very, just the beginning, just the tip of the iceberg, right? So it is this huge thing, and that's what it makes me think about it first. And then the second piece is, in America, a lot of Christianity is tied to belief. A lot of Christianity is tied to having the right beliefs about God, the right beliefs about Jesus. And those things get formed into like doctrines or dogmas. And if they're helpful for your life, then that's great. But often what happens is those beliefs become entrenched. And then we feel like we have to win a debate or win an argument or prove that I'll put it on me. There have been times in my Christian life where I've thought, I have to prove to somebody else that my belief is more right than their belief is, that I'm right and that they're wrong. And all that does is just make people defensive and then cleat in, and it breaks down any sense of relationship. So for me, a real turning point in my Christianity was when I moved away from that central focus of being belief and moved more toward a way of life and moved more toward living. And within the living piece, what I find is I have a lot more compassion and a lot more forgiveness, because living can be difficult and living can be messy.
Yeah.
Beliefs can be nice and clean. And theoretically, when I live in a theoretical world, it can be very clean and easy, and you could even make all kind of arguments to prove your point, and all that's great. But when you try to put it into concrete life and live it out with the people that you live with, you can't stay clean anymore.
Right.
So that was a big turning point, is moving away from proving that I'm right and you're wrong, and into, I'm just going to live this the best that I can.
I think that's a great way to wrap things up with that idea of just trying to live it the best that we can. I think that's what we're all hopefully trying to do with each other. So happy that you joined us here today, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. If this has opened up something in your mind that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to have you do that. We'll have some links in the show notes to some of the resources we mentioned. The Desmond Dawes True Story, Hacksaw Ridge, we'll have a link to that, as well as to the Brian McLaren book that we mentioned earlier. Thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you, and take care.